Christian Leadership Partners. I'm the lead facilitator in a company that provides leadership training and mentoring for profit and nonprofit organizations throughout the United States and through Central and South America. What we wanted to do is we wanted to provide you with a 30-day training program that allows you to be able to take the leadership lessons learned from the Bible and from the kings of Israel and apply it to your own life. And we're going to take 30 days to do this, and you can look at each and every one of this. This is the third day that we've actually done this. If you can, don't forget to subscribe over here, because when you do, you'll actually be notified of whenever there's a new video, so you won't miss any of this training. Our intention is to provide you with one of these every single day for the next 30 days. So what we want to do is we want to take a look at the kings of Israel. Why do we do that? Well, they give us a picture of what leadership is right and how leadership can actually be wrong. We can also take a look at the historical record of their successes and of their failures. So not only can we look at the kings, we can also look at how they succeeded and possibly how they failed. And we can look at the different attributes and the different things that they applied to each situation and how they used them. Because when we do that, then we know that we can actually start using their failures as something that'll keep us from making the same mistakes, right? So the next thing that we want to make sure that we do is this will always point us towards servant leadership. Servant leadership is the type of leadership that David provided, but it's also the type of leadership that Jesus Christ provided. And if we can look for all of those attributes in all these different kings that point to this, that Robert Greenleaf talked about in servant leadership, then what we can do is then we know that we can succeed as leaders. So what we want to do is we want to start applying those techniques and the things that we look at as we go through the Bible, and we take a look at, today we're going to look at the life of King David. Now, King David went through a lot of issues, and in fact, yesterday we talked about David's life before he became king. There's a lot for us there, and that's all throughout 1 Samuel. If you read through that, you can see David's life was filled with all kinds of different trials and difficulties. He went through and had lots of successes, but he also had lots of failures. And you can see how David addressed each and every one of those things. And we want to be able to do the exact same thing. And in fact, David is so important that all the other kings throughout the Bible are actually compared to him. Even Jesus Christ was compared to David. And we know that there are some kings that did not do what David did in the sight of the Lord, and we'll see that as we go through. And there are others that are actually better than what David was as a leader. And we can see that, and it's actually annotated in both Chronicles and in the books of Kings. So we want to go through, and we're going to use both of those references so that we don't miss a thing. We want to make sure that we take these lessons and we apply them to our lives as we go through. So let's take a look at King David as King David. Now in 2 Samuel 5:3 we read, "So there at Hebron, King David made a covenant before the Lord with all the elders of Israel, and he anointed him king of Israel." So even though he was anointed by Samuel, he actually went through the process of getting all the leaders together, getting them on the same page, and actually making a covenant with them and with God. You know, if you make a covenant with God and you make a covenant with the leaders around you, then you're obviously going to succeed. That's what our founding fathers did in America. If we take a look at the Declaration of Independence, and what they did was they actually set a covenant before God and man. And when we do that, we know that we are responsible to God for our actions and for the different things that we achieve. We also want to make sure that if we keep our hearts and our minds and our eyes focused on what God has called us to do, then we can succeed as leaders. And that's what we really want to do. If we do that, then we know that as leaders, we'll be able to make a difference in a lot of people's different lives. So in 2 Samuel 5:10, we read this, "And David became more and more powerful because the Lord God of heaven's armies was with him." Now this is early on in his kingship, but we see that throughout all the battles that David led, and he went out and fought in most of these battles early on. And we see that he was successful in everything that he did. And God was with him all the way along the way. We see that God was not with Saul because Saul had gone out in a different type of attitude. He had a different spirit about him. But David continually worshiped the Lord, and he had this covenant not only between the men that were underneath him, but also with the God of heaven's armies. So if we know that we can do those things, then we know that we can also follow along and do the things that David did as far as these covenants go, as far as his promises go. And if we know that God is with us, then we can become more and more successful as we go. We want to make sure that we take our successes and we build on those, so that as we go through the leadership process, our people are able to see that we're actually getting better and not worse. I know that you can sit down and you can think about leaders that you've had in the past that have actually gotten worse as they got older or as situations came upon them where they fell apart like a $2 suitcase. So what we really want to do then is start taking these leadership lessons and applying them to our lives and seeing how those will change us. So let's take a look at how David did some of these things. In 2 Samuel 5:19 we read, "So David asked the Lord, 'Should I go out and fight the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me?' The Lord replied to David, 'Yes, go ahead. I will certainly hand them over to you.'" If you remember yesterday, what we did was we found that David actually went through and he asked the Lord if he should pursue after the raiders that actually came into his camp. And the Lord said, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." He did it again here with the Philistines. And did it again in several other instances. And we know that when David did these things and inquired of the Lord, he was successful. And in fact, we can look at other leaders that did the same thing. Joshua was the same way. When he stopped and paused and allowed God to show him where he needed to go and how he needed to do it, he was successful in whatever he did. When he boldly went through and said, "Oh, we got this. It's a small little town of Ai," they were defeated. And it's because they didn't inquire of the Lord. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we've got a clear picture from the top. If we can go through and we can identify these things that the people ahead of us or on top of us that said that they want to accomplish, if they said these are what our visions, these are our goals, then we want to make sure that we align our vision and our goals and our team vision and our team goals with the visions and the goals of the organization. If I can write these things down, if I make a list of the goals and the visions of the organization on one side, and if I match up my goals and my visions of what I want for my team, are they the same? Do they mesh? Do they come together? If they don't, then I need to reassess my goals and my missions, at least as far as my leader in that organization goes. So we want to make sure that we do that. We also want to make sure that as leaders, we do the same thing with our subordinates. We want to make sure that those things are actually there as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this in our little get-together or our little exercise that we have at the end. 2 Samuel 6:14 says, "And David danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a priestly garment." We can see that David continually praised the Lord. And this was the solution for him to be able to be a strong leader. When he submitted himself and didn't care what anybody else thought and did what he was told to do or believed that was told to do by the Lord, then he was successful. And we want to do the same thing. If we're following the vision and the idea of what people have that are appointed over us and tell us what to do, then we know that we can celebrate ourselves in that. And if I'm happy about it, not to the point of dancing, but to the point of actually being excited about the things and the tasks that people have given me, then I know that I'm going to be able to succeed as a leader. And isn't that important for the people underneath us? 2 Samuel 7:11 and 12 tells us this, that God gave David a promise. It says, "I will give you rest from all your enemies. Furthermore, the Lord declares that he will make a house for you, a dynasty of kings. For when you die and are buried with your ancestors, I will raise up one of your descendants, your own offspring, and I will make his kingdom strong." That is not Solomon. That is Jesus Christ. This is a promise and a covenant that David had with God, that God would take his seed and eventually bring Jesus Christ to bear, and he would be that king that people would actually follow. He would be that king that would rule over the world. And we'll see that when he comes again with his angels. But we know that this is a promise that God gave to David so that he could keep his vision on what God wanted him to do. The vision that you have in your heart and your mind will actually be the vision that will cause you to succeed. We read this in 2 Samuel 12:10. It says, "From this time on, your family will live by the sword because you have despised my taking Uriah's wife to be your own." So if we understand this, that a lot of times the covenant is broken. And a lot of times God will say, "Look, you blew it, but I'm still going to keep you as king." And we're going to see that in the promises as we go along, that because God made that covenant with David, he's going to keep his promise to the kings or to his sons underneath him. So let's take a look at David's strengths and his weaknesses as a leader. David's strength was that David remained loyal to the Lord and to the people underneath him. He set a good example. He focused on positive emotions. He led from the front. He lived up to his reputations. Remember, he wasn't always clearly thinking. He did not always check with higher. And that's why we see problems with him. So what we want to do is we want to identify what our greatest good is as a leader. If I can do that, then I know that I can be successful. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to go through and we want to make sure that we take the steps that we need to do to get there. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of this. Make sure that you download the notes that are down below, and you can get more out of it as you open those up. And share this. Share the most of this as you possibly can. And I really do ask you to consider going to our website and checking out what we're doing. We're really making a difference in a lot of people's lives. Well, God bless you, and why don't you go out and be a leader?